Welcome to the Nepos Lightning Talks, Season 2 and talk number 4. It's Leland talking today about his lessons learned from the MTP Engage, the most important conference for product owners. And as Leland is our product owner, we are very happy that he attended the event and shared some lessons learned with us today.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. So, welcome everybody. The product, Mind the Product, MTP, is a conference series that happens all around the world. The two main locations are in London and San Francisco, with thousands of attendants. And I attended the version of the conference in Hamburg. So it was a smaller version. It didn't have thousands of attendants. It actually had hundreds. It was about 200, 300 people. And that was about 2 weeks ago on May 24th. So today I wanted to give some lessons and insights from my experience. So this is the conference, and you can see we have about 200 people here. And I actually want to show you guys the highlight video from the conference so you get an idea. Hopefully you can see it on the camera well. And is there audio here? There we go.
We are there to actually solve problems for our customers, but in ways that work for the business.
Tech is not in the garage anymore. Tech is in charge. That means that it falls upon us as the current generation of entrepreneurs and product managers to figure out what that means.
We learned a lot of interesting points on product discovery principles and techniques, and how I could take these insights back to my organization and my product team.
I met Marty Caden, which is probably like you meet one of your big idols when you work in product, right? So that was pretty exciting. So I met him 2 days ago on the leadership forum already, where he was part of a panel discussion, and learned a lot about how we should develop our best product managers.
The buddy who used to sit next to me was a guy who's coming from Canada to this event here. We're kind of on the same level currently with what we're doing. We're talking about product discovery weeks, and yeah, it was interesting.
So, as you can see, I was there. There was a piece of the video that had me. Overall, it was really interesting to be in a conference that had everyone doing the same thing that I was doing. And being the product owner at Nepos, where I'm the only person working on the agile product approach, it was refreshing to hear some insights and to get some reinforcement on some of my ideas. So, oh yes, also that's where I'm in the conference right there. You can see by my beanie. So yeah, what I wanted to do is to go through some of the highlight lessons that I took away. Instead of summarizing every talk and every experience that I had there, what I did at the end of the talk is I wrote down some quotes that were somehow highlighted at the end of the experience, still in my mind. And I wanted to share that with you, and some thoughts and some questions that we can ask ourselves from what this might imply. So for the first topic, it was that it's time for tech to grow up. And what it means is that we're now in a new era of the world that we can't ever go back from. Somehow Pandora's box was opened, and technology has come out and changed the way that we interact and live and think about relationships, nations, each other, and tech products scale very quickly and impact people in ways that we could have never imagined that that now have serious consequences. So for example, how Facebook ads were influential in the Brexit vote, and that there was no control or oversight into people creating ads that said Turkey was going to join the EU if England didn't leave Brexit. So the conclusion was that tech needs to grow up, in that we went through this nascent phase of creating all this tech and seeing unexpectedly what it created, and now we need to take responsibility for what tech creates and causes, and there's unintended consequences. For example, when Uber took over San Francisco, first it was really difficult to find a taxi in the city, and so it was actually a problem. But now there's so much traffic from people outside of San Francisco driving into Uber, into San Francisco, that it's hard to drive a car in the city, and that there's pollution, unintended consequences. So tech can really change things much faster than we've ever been able to change things, but also the people who are creating the tech have some sort of responsibility to think about the consequences that even they don't expect to create, because somehow tech is a power, a tool, and with that power comes the responsibility of thinking about how to use it. And so the question I thought that we should ask ourselves when we're product people or team building products is, are you taking the responsibility and holistically thinking about the impact of your tech decisions? Because when we think holistically, we're thinking beyond even just our users. And this goes from data security to device maintenance, to everything that we think about at Nepos. The next topic that I wanted to say, and I'll just tell you guys that all of the quotes that I have are a bit separated and disconnected, but have something to offer. So there's no theme, just each was the remaining thoughts at the end of the conference for me. Avoid buzzwords and jargon. Say what you mean and be willing to define it. And I thought that was really interesting because so many product people there have so much jargon and buzzwords and terms and ideas and agile and scrum and Kanban and velocity, and somehow all of these ideas about what a product should be and how a product should be built can get overwhelming and can somehow become a way for you to hide behind the reality of what is going on. And so what I liked was that the speaker told us, be willing to define what you mean. So when you talk and when you're saying something, can you, if asked, define what you're actually trying to say? Or are you just hiding behind meaningless words? And the question that I pose to you guys to think about is, are you getting to the heart of the matter, or is the way in which you're communicating creating confusion? So I think that's something important for us to think about when we're communicating externally to our customers, or when we're communicating internally with the company, is what we're saying really what we're trying to say? And are we getting to the heart of the matter? Or is there something else that's going on that's creating confusion? And I think that's also another responsibility that we have to take. So the other thing that I thought was really interesting is, as a product team and creating a product, you're either exploring or executing, not both. And somehow many product teams get trapped in this in-between world of trying to create a new product and trying to build it. And there needs to be this exploration phase where you're trying to understand, what is the best product? What is the best feature? What do my customers actually want? Are these my actual customers? And you're thinking and you're trying and you're experimenting and you come up with hypotheses. But at one point, you really have to shift into this execution phase where you have a hypothesis and you have some expectations about what you'll achieve, and you go for it and you don't look back. And the key thing is that you're switching in between the exploration and the execution phases, and you know which phase you're in at which point. But that doesn't mean that you're not going back and forth. You can have a really strong hypothesis with expectations, hit the market with it, work really hard to launch it, and then learn that you were wrong. And it's okay. Then you switch back into the exploration phase with the new information that you've learned. But too often teams are somehow in between both stages and not properly exploring and not properly executing. And that was the lesson to be learned, is know where you're at and focus on what you're doing. So the question to ask our team is, are we being consistently honest and aware about which product stage we're at? And somehow that is a difficult question to ask, because it can be easy to not really know the answer and to just try to move forward. The other lesson that I liked was allow your teammates to place bets. And what this means is so often companies are very strict in trying to succeed that they don't allow people to be wrong. And when they're wrong, they are punished. But the truth is, if you're going to be truly innovative, people have to be willing to place bets. And what does that mean? Is they have to be willing to take a risk and come up with an idea that might be wrong. But what is a bet? It's something that is calculated based on the risk at the given moment, and the person is not sure if it's going to be right or wrong. It could be wrong, it could be right, but they're going to place a bet. And they feel the motivation and the support from the team culture that they are able to place a bet. It's a calculated bet. You're never going to win something big unless you're willing to bet. But you also have to have the confidence in the culture to feel like, okay, my team will support me. I'm making my best decision here. And I thought it was a really cool analogy, because so many times people say, like, failure is super important to success. Be willing to fail. But they don't talk about this betting idea, which is, do you allow people to give their best effort in something that might be wrong? That then results in failure sometimes and results in success. And it ties back to this idea of failure is important to success, but somehow it also is maybe the starting point that a culture needs to have in order for people to learn from failure. So I really like this analogy. And I thought the question to ask ourselves is, does the organization encourage and support individuals to place bets and be wrong? Now, doesn't mean we always are going to be wrong, because a bet somehow is a calculated risk, and it's your best guess. So hopefully with talented individuals, sometimes we're going to be right. The other topic that I thought, or quote that I thought was really important or really impacted me, was conflict is where the product magic is. And what it means is not necessarily that you need to be constantly having conflict, or that if your organization has conflict that your product is going in the right direction. But really what it is intending is that if the product is going to reach its full potential of what it could be, you need to be discussing with people of different opinions. The stakeholders can be the investors, they can be the founders, they can be the teammates, the product owner, the designer, or the users. And everyone has an idea of what it could be. And only when you contrast all of those ideas and you create this conflict of not clear understanding, will you then get to the magical sweet spot of a product that solves the balance between everyone. And unless you're willing to get into that conflict zone, you're not going to reach the magic. And I thought that was really interesting, because the other point mentioned was that you have to be willing to be uncomfortable to get to that point. You have to be willing to question yourself and question others. And that is somehow very uncomfortable for people. Whether it's questioning if your idea is good enough, or that you were so convinced about going in one direction, actually you need to go in another direction, versus questioning one of your close teammates or a user if they're really giving you all of the information, or they really know what they're talking about. So being willing to do that is uncomfortable, but again, that conflict is exactly where the product magic is. And unless you're willing to push to that uncomfortable level, you're not going to get the greatest product that you can. And the question that I thought to ask ourselves is, are you willing to speak up and be uncomfortable for your product ideas? And that goes from everyone in the organization. It's not just about the product owner, it's from the content writer who comes up with an idea like Karina did, let's do a lexicon, and speaking up and saying something, and then we have suddenly an opportunity to do something new that we didn't think about. And the next question too is, does the organization value resolving the uncomfortable product decisions? So is that a priority, or is that something that is considered a hindrance to the product? So some organizations, they will avoid these topics and conflicts, and when they arise, they postpone or reschedule them. But some organizations say, okay, let's figure this out, let's dive into it, let's make sure that we don't move forward until we're on the same page about this. And the next quote or idea was focus, focus, focus. Make one move at a time. I think this was super important because what really product organizations are in the grand scheme of the world of potential products is little organizations and units that really can't make so much impact at one time. But if they work together to do something, they must focus one step at a time to move forward. And so often a small organization will really see the full vision that they have and try to accomplish everything at once, or try to do many pieces that are interconnected so that they can accomplish what they see as the potential solution to the product. But what the conference over and over repeated to us or tried to suggest is that in order for you to succeed and to actually end up with a product that works and that has users, is that you have to focus on one single thing at a time and make that function, learn from that experience, and move on and continue to build. But without this focus, you will lose the potential of your team, because it's really it's a big potential, but it's also only capable of doing so much. So you need to somehow focus it like a laser beam. And yeah, you need to be making one move at a time. So the question is, have you lost focus by trying to do too much at the same time? And the next topic or quote that I found interesting was, good enough is good enough. So look at this photo, I really like it. It's a couple of guys sitting with life vests on bamboo chairs on a bamboo raft. And somehow you would imagine, like if you're in Berlin in the Spree, this really nice tourist boat with like a microphone announcer giving you like, there's a cocktail bar at the back and you're going down the Spree. And that boat is like such a much better experience, but somehow this little bamboo raft is going down this river valley in Vietnam, and it's just an incredible view. And it gets across this point that sometimes good enough is just good enough, and you don't need to have everything that you could imagine. And that is something that is quite a problem for product teams, is that everything is possible and everything is imaginable. But at the end of the day, if you want to succeed and have a product that is existing and has users, sometimes you need to be willing to compromise and sacrifice and just release what is good enough, and not to over-engineer the most perfect solution, but then miss out on having a competitor come into the market with something that was just good enough. So the question is, will you survive with what you can get, or disappear in beauty? And the final topic or quote for me, which I thought was the most important, was, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. And what this really means is that so often as product people, or as visionaries or as entrepreneurs, as someone with an idea, you can very easily lose sight of why you originally created the idea and start to fall in love with the idea itself. And you get a disconnect from the actual source and cause and reason for the solution to exist. And somehow you start to listen less to what is the most important thing in the whole story, which is why you're trying to create this solution. And they giving us a lot of examples of product teams who started to build features and started to do things that they thought were exciting, but then the customers didn't use them, or the customers were like totally uninterested. And what you have to do as a product person is always be thinking, what piece of product or what feature or what am I doing, and how does that connect to the actual problem that we're solving? And always remember that the problem, if you're in love with the problem, you're going to find the solution, and you're going to always get there, even if you take many, many, many wrong steps. So I really like that lesson, which is somehow also really relevant to Nepos, and that's why I put this photo here of showing a young child with VR and a senior who's looking out into the distance, wondering when they're going to be able to use VR. Because, yeah, we need to think about what is it that we're trying to solve and how is the best way to get there. And sometimes you need to be willing to scrap and give up on some pieces or assumptions that you had previously, because you know in the long run the problem will be better solved with this new direction or new approach that you learned. Because constantly we're learning, constantly new information comes up, and we never know what tomorrow will bring. And that is somehow encapsulated in this quote. And the question to ask is, are you so blinded by your vision that you can't see the real problem anymore? So, in conclusion, or to try to have some sort of conclusion, I wrote that product is complex. No, I wrote that product is a complex reality of soft skills, conflicting factors, and uncertainties. Dare to be wrong, speak up about how you feel, collaborate to leverage potential, be flexible, lean, and determined in achieving a solution that solves your target problem. And somehow that's what product is, which is not so simple. So, thank you. And with that, we can get to a spring paradise with a vision for a tablet and hardware, software for seniors of not only Germany, but all of the world.
Woo!